Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would discuss with you guys kind of the stance that Eric Helms and Greg Nuckols have made as far as the fat-free mass index. And the reason I need to bring this up is because the video I made the other day about Omar Issoff, about strength versus hypertrophy for training, I discussed that fat-free mass index again, and several people came in and said, yeah, but haven't these guys debunked that that's not really true? Let's go ahead and discuss that. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on scaling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. I'm going to say that they've made some interesting points, but as far as debunking it, they haven't debunked it even by a long shot. See, it says it right there on the container, long shot, red letters. They haven't even done it by a long shot. And here's what people need to understand. What they have debunked is a straw man argument. No reasonable person out there says that fat people who lift and eat a lot of food don't exceed the 25 fat-free mass index. What people are saying is that lean people drop under that is a general rule without anabolics if they diet down under 10% body fat. Now when I mean under 10% body fat, I'm talking like DEXA or Bod Pod 10%, not what you people think is 10%. All right? Because a lot of people out there think 14% is 10%. And if you're 200 pounds at 14% body fat, that's like another gallon of fat. There's about 7 pounds in a gallon of fat. That's literally different. There's an extra gallon of fat on your body from what a lot of people think 10% body fat really is versus what it truly is. So the point that people need to understand there, we're not talking about people who are 13%, 15%, 35% body fat. No one is talking about that. We all understand. We know that sumo wrestlers have more than that, and they don't use anabolics as a general rule, right? I think the average sumo wrestler had something like a 28 or a 29 fat-free mass index when they actually studied it and looked at them. That is, again, an enormous amount of muscle beyond that. We're talking another 10 or 15 pounds more muscle mass sitting on those fat guys than what it would take to be at that fat-free mass index. That's not what people are talking about. We are saying that the getting ripped makes you lose muscle mass is what people are saying. And that has been shown in study after study after study. And so Dr. Helms did his doctoral work on that. He knows that drug-free guys, when they're cutting down contest lean, are losing a lot of fat-free mass. They're losing it pretty quickly. And in fact, even if you don't lose muscle and the leaner you diet down, you lose some fat-free mass purely through dieting, even if you maintain your tissue protein in your muscle. There is lean mass loss because there's other tissues that aren't muscle that are lean mass that do get broken down in a large weight loss process. And that's what people are saying. And then they're saying, well, the one big study done on it really wasn't that great of a study, so you can't base this hard number, this 25, on such limited data on a study that really wasn't conducted amazingly well, didn't really look at enough people. Even though it was in the past, it would be hard to redo that study today because everyone lies about their use. They're saying that study wasn't particularly well done. There's problems with it. And I happen to agree with that point. You know what? That is a totally fair and reasonable point. That's a totally fair and reasonable point. And I agree that 25 isn't a hard set number. I think it's lower. Based upon my observations, I think genetics play a role, and I think the 25 represents a small percentage of the population. I don't think someone with average genetics can ever reach a 25 fat-free mass index at 7 or 8% body fat without drugs, no matter how good their coaching is, no matter how good their nutrition is. I don't think they can do it. So here's my argument. My counter argument is that you guys are right, that the data isn't good. And in fact, I think the data was too generous. Me personally, I'm of the opinion that the data was incorrect in the other direction. I don't think because the data is flawed that it means there's a bunch of dudes walking around at 27 fat-free mass index, lifetime drug-free, at 7% body fat. I think there's a bunch of dudes who have pushed their limits and they're at 22 and 23. That's what I think. I think the guys who are at 23, who have 10 plus years of hard training under their belt, outnumber the guys who are at 25. I think they're the majority. I think only the genetically gifted can reach the 25. And I bet you that the number of people who could reach a 26 or a 27 who are out there, I bet you there's probably less than 5 of them who actually train seriously for hypertrophy, probably anywhere in the world. Those are your extreme genetic outliers. It's possible they exist. They probably do. There's genetic extremes and mutations out there, right? But here's my point. Who cares? Like, if you could find a handful of people in the world with a rare set of genes, how does that change the rules for everyone else in the world? It doesn't. It's statistically irrelevant people. Anomalies in the statistics are not what we base rules upon for the general population, is it? It's also not what we base rules upon of who we're going to buy products from and services from, and it shouldn't be. And here's would be my point to prove this the other direction. Let's take the 2 guys claiming it. They both have advanced degrees. They're both elite athletes. They're both very, very knowledgeable. I mean, I think we all agree Eric Helms is a very knowledgeable, experienced guy. As far as Greg Nuckols go, I consider Greg Nuckols to be one of the best resources out there for training information. So let's look at them. If they want to argue that this 25, well, it's not true, and that plenty of people, or large numbers, maybe even the average person could reach that, then why can't Eric do it? And that's kind of my counter argument. Has Eric Helms at any point ever stepped on stage with a 24, let alone a 25 fat-free mass index? Does he not know how to train? Does he not know how to eat? What's the problem? Eric is not even a lifetime natty. He has done a cycle of anabolics. He has done a steroid cycle, admittedly, and he knows it. We've discussed this. I've discussed this with him before years ago, in case he forgot. It was documented. It was publicly documented when he did it, because he did it on bodybuilding.com and left a log. So this is a person who has done a cycle of anabolics, admittedly, publicly documented it, has a PhD in nutritional science, so he clearly knows how to eat to preserve muscle mass, right? I think when you've done your doctoral work on pre-contest bodybuilders, that's one hell of a qualification on saying that you're an expert on retaining muscle mass while dieting down lean. That's about as much of an expert as you can possibly be. I don't think any of us out there can make that sort of claim. That technically makes him a rather rare expert. So to say that he knows how to eat would be an understatement. He writes training programs partially as a part of his livelihood for people in multiple disciplines. So he knows how to train, and he's been doing it over a decade, and he has a Natty Pro card. He can't even reach a 24. He can't reach a 24. When ripped, when peeled, right? He can't do it. He has not physically been able to do it, despite his vast amount of knowledge and his vast number of years training. Do you know why? Because he has average genetics for muscle mass, and he's only done 1 steroid cycle in his whole life. That's not good enough to reach a 25. Hell, apparently that's not even good enough to reach 24. That would be my retort. If it's so possible to do, why can't you do it as someone with the amount of training experience that you have and very obvious knowledge and a steroid cycle under your belt? You still can't get even close? Could it be that you haven't used more steroids and that you're genetically average? Could that be? Could it be that the average genetic person simply can't do this? That it's not within their reach? Because the study wasn't good, the study suggested that more people could probably reach it than really could. The speed limit for the natural, if you want to call it that, the upper threshold for someone who's lean, down under 10% body fat, is probably much lower than 25 for people who are not very genetically gifted. He's the textbook example, and he's one of the people debunking it. His arguments that the data isn't good is actually still supported by our observation of him. You're right, the data wasn't very good, because The data suggests that you could get a lot closer than you actually have, and you haven't been able to. So yeah, we agree the data's wrong, because I don't think the flaw is in his nutrition or training. He's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. And I don't think that's even deniable. And you take Greg. Greg has tried to point this out too, but Greg never talks about the lean thing. He only focuses in on the straw man. And this is not a diss at Greg, because I like Greg. I think maybe Greg might not even be aware, because what you see are the other people like Eric discussing it. Greg might not actually be aware that the argument has not been 25. The argument is 25 when people are really lean. Greg bulks up. Greg stays fat by bodybuilding standards, right? He's what they call a strong fat guy. He obviously knows that dieting down lean costs him muscle and strength, or else he wouldn't bulk up and be where he is. As far as genetics go, I think it's fair to say that Greg is above average genetics. A person who breaks a drug-tested powerlifting record, which Greg has done in the past, person who breaks a drug-tested powerlifting record, I'm going to say probably has better than average genetics. Greg has also repeatedly been involved in studies showing, and his own opinion is that your total lean mass in your body relative to your height is directly correlated to your max squat, and that he feels that he can calculate powerlifters' totals based upon their lean mass and their height, that he is able to get really, really close in guessing what their totals are going to be in competition. And he feels that he can successfully do this. So he believes strength is directly correlated with size. My challenge to Greg would be, okay, so you're claiming that this 25 isn't true. Can you do it? Can you diet down to 8% body fat while enrolled in WADA testing? Because he has been enrolled in testing. He's been drug tested. He's competed as a serious tested powerlifter. He has been drug tested. Prove it wrong then. And I really mean this, because if you're claiming that this isn't true, and the rest of it are saying, no, this is true, this is how it works, you're someone who's sitting right now at probably a fat-free mass index of higher than 25 at a high body fat. Enroll yourself back in WADA testing and diet down to 8% body fat and step on a DEXA scan. I would be willing to bet a dime to a donut hole. I am a Texan, guys. I'd be willing to bet that he falls under 25 when he does it. So I guess my point is that you have some of these experts who are saying, well, the study isn't well done, we don't think the data is good. Well, then you guys do it. You guys show that it can be done, because I don't think either one of them could pull it off. And Eric has the genetic cop-out, and that's not a cop-out, it's a legitimate reason he can't do it, because it doesn't work for people with average genetics. They can't get anywhere near 25 on lean. And Greg, who does have good genetics, I think the same thing would happen. I think he would drop down to 25 or less on his fat-free mass index if he cut down to even 8%. He doesn't need to get full contest 6% shredded. I bet you at 8%, 9% body fat on a confirmed DEXA, he would probably be 25 or less. I would argue that the people who hit 25 while lean, I guarantee you probably less than 1% of the population even has the ability to do that. I would argue that less than 1% even have the genetics to do that. And the ones that do, it probably takes them 15 years of training to reach that point. Because I've only know of a tiny handful of guys out there who I think might be natural, who have done this. And they all have at least 15 years of continual lifting experience. All of them. I think that these are very, very rare individuals. So I think the study has been overinflated. I think the data is the other direction. I think a person with average genetics would be really lucky to hit 23 when walking around at 8 or 9% body fat. I think 23 for a lot of people is going to be close to their limit. That yes, there is a massive genetic component. There's a massive genetic component. And it ultimately what it comes down to is that anabolics preserve muscle mass when you're dieting. That's the point. We're not talking about how much total size you can get while continuing to bulk fat, because we know if you continue to get fat, you can keep gaining more and more muscle way beyond what you would ever be able to put on your frame when lean. There's a reason people bulk. The reason anyone chasing absolute strength, for example, because they know they need the muscle mass, gets fat. There's a reason for that. There's a reason most drug-free strength athletes don't walk around at 8% body fat. There are good reasons for that. Because they'll lose muscle. And that's the point, is not that people can't reach that by getting fat, it's that they can't keep it when they get lean. And the people who are running around doing this, these are fake natties selling you guys garbage and using their supposed results as the justification for you people to spend your hard-earned money on whatever it is that they are selling. And that's a problem. And anyone who's not standing up to that is promoting charlatanry. Let's just be realistic. Let's call it what it is. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.